Hello. Where have y'all been? Just kidding. I know it was me. I feel like it's been like 6 years since I was there. Hello, Bree. What's up? Flashman and I am melting. How are you? Hey, Carmen. Long time no speak. You never left me. Whatever. Sneaking. Nope. I have not snuck into any hotels lately and never have snuck into a hotel, but thanks. Thanks for the advice you gave me on how to do it, Flashman. So I apologize for my absence last week. The storm that came through Wednesday evening, right after the Reed verdict came in, power went out, came back on, and then went back out, and then not come back on again until Saturday afternoon. So it was very hot, and we have a generator, so we were able to run a few things like keep the fridge going and uh, that sort of stuff, but no AC. And then we are under a heat advisory, so that was fun times. But we made it. We made it, and we were not the last to be turned on, but we were some of the last to be turned on. I did see the next day that there was some poor souls that were still without power, and I've not looked today because I just didn't think about it. Flashman, you can do your court watch anytime. I'm actually probably going to stick with this night schedule because this works better for me. So you, whenever you need to do it, I still will not be streaming on Fridays, just because I have Mad Dog. But yeah, anytime. Yes, Mad Dog turns 1 on Friday, and that's also used to be known as my anniversary. It is. It is. It's okay. I proudly hand it over to Mad Dog. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, Flashman, but have to uh, you have to do what you need to do. I will not have any hard feelings. Okay, so we're back with Betty. Betty is still on stand. We still have a lot of Betty to go. Um, this is part 4 of part 12 of Betty being on the stand. Don't be confused with part 20 that it says of the Betty Broderick trial. It's hard to keep it all straight, but Betty's parts they are divided, and her part is 12 parts. So that's the reason I am putting hers that way. Once we're through with Betty's testimony, then I will just put um, part 1056, whatever. I don't know how many it'll be, but it's going to be a lot. So we've got about 2 hours again of testimony tonight. Betty is still she's under direct examination from her attorney. We've heard a lot of repetitive testimony so far. Uh, I mean, I think we can all recite what, like, up to the day of the unaliving, which I keep forgetting to do this, and I mean to, and I'm so sorry. This is the Betty Broderick trial. This is from 1991. It is the second trial that Court TV aired after the Pamela Smart trial, a school teacher who allegedly paid 2 students to unalive her husband. Great teacher. I don't know if she's worse or better than the ones today, but anyway. So Betty is accused of unaliving her ex-husband Dan and his new wife of 6 months, Linda Kolkena. I can't remember how to say her last name. She was quite a bit younger than Dan. Say she was the younger, prettier version. The Betty. Uh, yeah, I guess you could say that. I don't think any of them were innocent in everything that happened. It was a very contentious divorce. Dan was a very prominent personal injury attorney. I think he was personal injury. There was a lot of money involved. Dan had a lot of connections lawyer-wise. And Betty says that she wasn't able to hire lawyers, although she went through quite a few. So I think as this has gone on, Betty's played victim. I do think she is a victim to some extent. I don't think she's innocent of not doing anything to just kind of, poke at Dan. And I think Dan and Linda knew how to push Betty's buttons. And I think they all three did just that. And Betty just, she lost it, for lack of a better term. Broke into their home while they were sleeping and used a firearm to unalive both of them. Yes, Pam Smart was a school teacher. And so was Betty. Betty versus Lori, who'd be the worst? I have to go with Lori on that one. Gonna have to say Lori. Alrighty, so I have this boosted. I have it sped up just a touch. Hopefully I don't get kicked out of here tonight like I did last week. Hopefully everything is running better and we can have a good stream. Hey, Haley, how you doing? So jealous. So jealous. Alrighty, I think for some reason it's funny when I start doing this again. I'm like, I don't even remember how to do it. So here we go. Let me know how the sound is and go from there. There's nothing playing right at the moment.
Your Honor, I would ask you mark this next in order. 2-page handwritten letter dated 8/22/6, just a heading Dan.
I would mark the double Q.
I'm not going to ask you to read the letter at this time, but would you look at it and tell me if you recognize that letter?
Yes,
And was that Mr. Hargrave's handwriting?
as far as I know, yes.
And did you see that in his file in January of 1986? January or February of 86?
Yes.
The Now, did your insurance payments policy had been paid by rather than my word. I'd like to have another document.
All right, finish double R.
I wonder if this would be an appropriate time to take the lunch recess. I have some other.
We can do that. Let's finish marking this document while we've got it.
I just had some other documents and I thought maybe I could just get them marked ahead of time.
We can do that. We've already got half of this on the record, so if you describe what it
It's
is.
a one-page letter, Your Honor, on heading of Daniel T. Broderick. One-page letter signed by Linda Kolkena with copies to various people.
All right, so marked. Now, do you want to take the recess?
Yes, sir.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our noon recess at this time. Please remember the admonition not to discuss the case among yourselves nor allow anyone to discuss it with you nor form any opinion until it's finally submitted to you. See you at 1:30, hopefully 1:30 sharp. Have a nice lunch.
Now, Broderick, in December of 1986, at that time when you got court-ordered support, at the hearing, was anything ordered in regards to insurance or any other things that you had at that time, health insurance, auto insurance?
No, that was one of the mistakes Mr. Hargreaves made.
Okay. Showing you what has been marked as RR for identification, do you recognize this letter?
Yes,
And was that a letter canceling your insurance?
this one's in canceling my health insurance, but there were others.
Okay, and who signed that letter?
Linda Kolkena on December 31st, the day after the court hearing on December 30th.
Now, how did you feel about that at the time?
Well, I knew on the day that it happened that Hargreaves had made a big mistake letting Dan get off without paying any of my insurances, because Dan used to pay the house insurance, the car insurance, the health insurance. And that was a blatant mistake of Mr. Hargreaves. So it was a loophole. And Dan and Linda saw it, and boy, they were right on the ball, 8 a.m. the next morning, sending out these letters, canceling everything. And Linda Kolkena doesn't type or anything, so it was not necessary that she sign these letters.
Yeah.
As legal assistant, Dan should have written these letters.
Okay, and did it upset you that her name was on there as canceling your insurance?
Every time she got in the middle of anything like this, it bothered me. I didn't think this was her place at all.
Did you talk to anybody about that?
Yes, I mentioned it to Mr. Hargreaves.
The I showed you some letters previously you received from your children. If you could just look from at SS, tell me if you recognize that letter.
Yes, this is from Lee at camp.
And was that also something that you received?
Yes,
The at the time that you had mentioned that during the time that the process was going on, that there was, before Mr. Hargreaves became your attorney, that there was a time when you were not signing things.
correct.
Do you recognize this letter, what has been marked TT for identification? Your Honor, if that could show that it's a one-page letter from Daniel Broderick to Elizabeth Broderick, dated April 28, 1986.
So, Mark,
Okay, was that something that was sent to you?
Yes,
That was something you received directly from Mr. Broderick and not from his attorney, is that correct?
right.
Now, in sometime in end of 1986 and 1987, did Mr. Ashworth had been Mr. Broderick's attorney?
Yes, that was his
Someone-
original attorney.
Okay, did someone else in his firm take over as the attorney?
Yes.
Okay, and who was that?
Gerald Barry,
And what was the reason that Gerald Barrett took over?
because Mr. Ashworth was made a judge in the family court.
And when you say a judge in the family court, where was family court located then?
On 6th Avenue, it's a little brick building on 6th Avenue.
Okay, and 4 or 5 judges in that building?
Yes, I think there's 4 courtrooms.
And at some point in time, when you got some legal paper, did Mr. Ashworth now name start appearing on some of that from the court as a judge?
Right, Judge Thomas Ashworth.
And what was your feelings about that?
Well, I had already had feelings that I was shut out of the system because of not being able to get an attorney, including Mr. Ashworth. And now I felt that in the little court system with him running the place as a judge, it seemed like a conflict of interest to me.
Okay. And showing you what is marked you for identification. Do you recognize this?
Yes,
And that's at least one of the pieces of paperwork that you saw.
yes.
The and just, I'm going to digress for a moment since I didn't have these marked at the time. VV for identification. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes,
And do you know when that was taken?
1985.
Yes. And what has been marked as WW for identification? Do you remember when that was taken?
1985 as well.
Okay. Was that in the home at Cali de Cielo?
Yeah,
And is that Danny and Rhett and the dogs?
the dog and her puppies, the girl dog and her puppies. Yes.
How are those pictures relevant to anything that's happening?
And another photograph, XX for identification. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
And where was that taken?
in the living room del Cielo when I had no furniture.
Okay. And it's,
Christmas time-ish.
Oh, I get it now.
okay. And how do you know it was Christmas time?
Because of my Christmas skirt and the boys' red things, but it wasn't right at Christmas. A friend had a party a week or two before Christmas.
Hey, Nidowow. How you doing?
Did you, were you able to go back into court at some point in time and have a judge do some changes in the court-ordered support that Mr. Hargraves had first gone in and got?
Yes, the day after the court disaster on December 30th, I met with Mr. Hargreaves, and he said, don't worry, we can go in on a reconsideration, but there was only a certain amount of days you had to do that, to go back in and redo it. And for the first time, he asked for records about lifestyle and income and things that he never asked for before the first hearing. So he was preparing to do the reconsideration.
Before Mr. Hargraves, before the end of December hearings, had Mr. Hargraves gone anywhere out of town at all?
Skiing, I believe.
Okay. And was there a time where letters as far as visitation during Christmas was sent to anybody?
Letters and money were sent to his office, and he was gone. So I wasn't informed of what was going to happen with visitation, and I didn't get my money until he got back.
And
So it appears on the dates of things that I should have gotten them, but I didn't.
was there a time when you were getting letters from Mr. Broderick where the dates on the envelope would be a lot different than the date on the letter?
Yes,
And how would that work?
they'd mail it later or something,
Okay,
and it would be dated earlier.
so you would get something dated on the first of the month, but it would be something you would receive in the middle of the month?
Yes.
The were you having any problems with your mail during that period of time?
Ever since Dan moved to Marsden Hills, my Coral Reef used to be our only residence as a family, and the mail used to always go to Coral Reef. And then when Dan and the children moved to Marsden Hills, my mail somehow got switched to Marsden Hills. And if it were bills or things, he'd send them to me. But if it were invitations or newsletters from my college or membership notices from the clubs or anything, I didn't get any of my mail for a long time. And I was kind of upset, especially about my college mail,
And
that he didn't forward it or anything, or set it aside for me or anything.
was there a reason that you were upset about the college mail?
Well, I missed a reunion because of it, and I was supposed to fill out a form that they sent, and I had nothing to do with the reunion because all my mail ended up at his house, and he didn't forward it.
What was the amount of the court-ordered support that you?
All right. I wish you could make up her mind. Is she broke or is she not? Don't really care about a college reunion, although it probably would have cost a lot of money because I think she went to college back east. She's in California. And I'm sure these clubs have some fees and dues. I don't get her. She's like, talks out of both sides of her mouth. I'm broke. I shop at Nordstrom's.
You finally received?
With Tricia Smith,
No, with Mr. Hargraves.
I think it was 12,000.
And where did you, now, whose name was on your house at that time?
Dan
And,
and mine.
okay, and did they continue to take payments, your bills out of your court-ordered support?
I know it was stopped after Tricia Smith came on the job, but I don't know if it was stopped when Hargreaves was in charge. Judge Jones made him stop taking stuff out of my money.
Was that did that happen? Was there a request in court as to the fine system?
Yes.
Okay, and was after the fine system, after the court got involved, did the fine system stop?
Yes. Judge Napoleon Jones said that Dan could no longer fine me, that he was not the judge and jury, and that Judge Jones would not stand for that Dan could not do that anymore.
Now, also in 1986, did you start receiving things anonymously in the mail?
Yes.
Okay, and what sort of things did you receive?
I received a picture of Dan and Linda at a party with a sticker on it that said, "Eat your heart out, bitch."
And showing you what has been marked YY for identification, Your Honor.
Just describe it for the record.
It says President-elect Party, Your Honor.
That's
and
good enough. One-page document?
One page.
All right, go ahead.
Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And did you receive this in the mail?
Yes.
Who was the people in the pictures?
Mr. Siteman is the old president of the bar. That's Linda Kolkena. That's Dave Monahan. And that's Dan Broderick. That's Brian. And that's Brian Forte right there.
Okay. Was a note attached to it at the time that you got it?
Yes.
And was Mr. Broderick that year to be president of the San Diego Bar Association?
That's what that's a picture of, yes. Him getting it. I think that's what it says, him getting installed as the president. And it says with him is Linda Kolkena, paralegal and close personal friend of the president-elect.
Now, at some point in time, did you talk to your attorney about the stuff you received in the mail?
Yeah, I showed him that.
Okay, and did he tell you that he talked?
Iris. I think it's bad pause for her. Miss Clairol, 180 yellow is her color, and her stylist, I'm sure at the time, could be found in Beverly Hills. Also, no. I know, right? The purple shampoo, and then they used to have the stuff that you could put in your hair that took the yellow out. I don't remember what it's called. VO5. What? Flash fan. I will never, ever, unless it's just ceiling fans from around the courtrooms of America would be the closest to OnlyFans page I will ever get. Hydrogen peroxide. Yes, Carmen, be nice. And Haley coming and dropping some knowledge. And her picture that she was just holding up that didn't have anything to do with anything, her hair was looked, that could have been the flash, but it looked blonde, not yellow. You bet she can get lemonade or grape Kool-Aid and mayo in prison. Oh my. See, I would be in trouble if I went, I'd be in trouble if I went to prison. My hair would not look like this. It would be quite gray. It would be bad. All right, Betty, I'll let you out of your bad pause. You deserved it, though.
Talk to anybody about that? Did
Yes.
you talk to Mr. Broderick?
Right. Told Dan to make it stop.
Did those things stop after that?
Yes. Well, I got other things besides that.
Okay. Now, but before you talked to Mr. Hargraves, Were there other things that you got in the mail besides that?
I would get white envelopes typewritten addressed to me with cutout newspaper ads for wrinkle cream and weight loss clinics and things. And it was all exactly the same time as that, but separate envelopes.
Okay. And did all those things stop after Mr. Hargraves talked to Mr. Broderick about it?
Yes.
Now, at the time that you were getting the support and your 12,000, and you were taking out your house payments and other things, do you know who was getting the tax benefits for those?
I never got the 12,000, but Dan must have gotten tax benefits.
Okay. Did you have some problems later on because you didn't know that there was taxes that you had to pay out of your money? Remember ever having a problem with all of a sudden having taxes owed that you didn't know were owed?
Not until much later.
Okay, but at some point in time that you became aware that you would not have these tax benefits and there was taxes that were owed?
I tried to have tax questions answered at that time, and I couldn't get any answers because nobody could give me any answers because they didn't know what property I owned and what I didn't own. And if we owned property together and Dan was taking all the tax benefits, then I couldn't get my half of the tax benefits. And we couldn't get any cooperation from his accountant as to what I owned and what were my half of tax benefits on anything. So there was a lot of confusion then.
On Christmas Day, did you have the children that year?
Which year?
This is 1986.
No,
And were you able to reach them on the telephone?
no.
And do you remember why?
That was the year Kim called me from Dan's den, which is where Dan's phone is that they're not allowed to touch. And what happened was Dan bought the boys a toy that needed batteries. And Dan went out on Christmas morning to get batteries. And Kim ran in the den and called me and said, I have to hurry up before he comes back because the 7-Eleven was just up on the corner. But she said, Merry Christmas and we're okay. And I got to get off this phone quick. And she told me that the other phone was locked in the closets.
Now, prior to that, at another Christmas time, had there been a discussion was there a time that Lee came over upset about not being able to buy you a present?
They told me in the previous Christmas that Dan made them buy presents for Linda, but wouldn't give them money to buy presents for me. And they never had any money the next year. So we didn't have any presents.
Had there been, before that time, had you had any type of tradition of Christmas parties or children's parties?
Yes, we had a very large family Christmas party every year with all the families that I knew in La Jolla with young children. And we had Santa and we had carolers on the stairs and we had jugglers and a lady made gingerbread houses one year and we had a professional storyteller. And it was a huge production with a professional photographer taking pictures of each family with Santa. And when Dan made me stop doing those Christmas parties in 1983, a lot of children didn't know what to do because our party was Christmas. So we were quite famous for this huge Christmas party we used to have, and then it stopped.
Now, at some point in time in 1987, we're now into January of 1987, did you, with the problems that you were having with Mr. Hargraves, did you try to get another attorney?
Yes, Mr. Hargraves filed whatever papers were necessary, I believe, that we would qualify for this reconsideration. But he disappointed me so badly at the one hearing that we had that I didn't want to trust him again. So I was running around like a crazy person trying to find another attorney really fast. And I had appointments every day with other attorneys. And I ended up back in Los Angeles again with Mr. Bill Glucksman.
Okay, now did you hire Mr. Glucksman?
Yes, I did.
And what did you use to hire Mr. Glucksman?
Well, he wanted a $10,000 retainer as usual, and I didn't have $10,000 to give him, so I had a necklace I used to wear all the time, and he took that instead.
And now, after you hired Mr. Glucksman, did he do some work on your case?
Yes.
Okay. And did he file some paperwork and attend some hearings?
Yes, he was absolutely appalled at the condition of my case.
Did how did you feel about Mr. Glucksman?
I thought he was really good, and I thought he would get some results.
Okay. And at that time, did you start seeing any psychologist or psychiatrist? Well, first of all, if I may go back, in January of 1987, Did Kim end up living at your house for some period of time?
Yeah, she had a fight with Dan and he threw her out of the house. And she ended up at my doorstep with a bedspread, like a humongous hobo pack with everything she owned in it. She moved into my house.
Did she tell you anything about what was going to happen with support in college?
She just moved into my house because she hated Dan and they were having this huge fight. And then Dan was away for the weekend. So she stayed the weekend. But on Sunday, when Dan came home from the weekend, he called her at my house. And he said to her that if she stayed with me, that I would not, meaning your mother, will not get 1 cent of child support, and you can just forget about going to college.
Okay. Now, did Kim move out shortly after that?
She went back that day because we both wanted her to go to college very much.
And did you, at some point in time, did you see a psychiatrist to go into some kind of family counseling with the children?
Yes, I met a Dr. Gerald Nelson from Del Mar at one of these charity groups I belong to. He gave a talk, and I thought he was wonderful, very level-headed, normal guy. And I made an appointment with him right away because my children, especially Danny and Rhett, but Lily and Kim as well, were extremely troubled. Every single one of them was not adapting well to the situation. The girls were doing very badly in school. The boys were threatening to run away, and they were fighting, and they wanted to be with me, and they were depressed and suicidal even. Both boys were written up as suicidal. And so I went to Dr. Nelson about getting help with my children. He is a child psychiatrist.
Now, the doctor, after you talked to Dr. Nelson, did he talk to you about using a Los Angeles attorney?
Yes, among other things. He said that, now, Betty, you're just not being real smart here, going back to LA again, because that's where you got in trouble the last time with the sale of the house and the 4-hour notice. You've got to have a San Diego attorney, and he referred me to Tricia Smith, who was literally around the corner from his office.
Now, also in February of 1987, was there?
Yeah, no, wow. So the boys were young. The one that we heard that phone call where he kept begging his mom to stop saying bad words so she could talk to them and see them, he was 11, and I believe there's a younger one. So I guess that just her phrasing, I keep pausing her in the best way. her phrasing of they were written up as being, I have to phrase this YouTube friendly, self-delete. They wanted to self-delete. What does that mean? They were written up, like take them to the doctor immediately. Like, I don't get that. You used to like her, but watching this trial changed your mind. I don't think you're the only one. Shenny, who drops in here every now and then, she has quite a history kind of around this trial. And when I very first started it, she came in and was fully on Betty's side. And I believe her mind has changed as she has watched this unfold, because she's like I said, they're all at fault, I believe. Betty just took it the farthest. I'm not sure, Flash fan. I don't remember, to be honest with you. I just remember the one, just because that telephone call that on the answer machine was awful to listen to. And I just remember them talking about him being 11. If I was in that state of mind, my mom, that'd be me, would do everything in her power for me to get help. I would try to, yes. Tammy, I felt bad at first, but her arrogance and ways, yeah, wow, it's exactly right. It's very out there. And she has yet, as far as I know, taken any responsibility for her actions, even to this day. 6 and 11. Okay. So, yeah, very young. I still don't. Oh, yeah, Flash fan. Absolutely. They think she was justified in what she did, that they pushed her, that she was just pushed over the edge, very victimized by Dan. And I'm not saying she wasn't, but you cannot go unalive people because they push you over the edge because they knew how to push your buttons. And yeah, but yes, there are definitely pro Betty people out there. There was. I don't know how many are still out there. I would not go look. That's a rock I don't want to turn over. You think my pauses on her face show her true colors? Dan Jr. and Rhett. Oh, I feel sorry for she's very, so to me, Iris, there's two sides to that coin. Yeah, she does seem money hungry. However, she put everything for her aside to raise the kids, do the whole family thing, help him get through law school. Well, I think through medical school, then law school, get his practice going. Young and pretty Linda walks in, 21. So, she hasn't pushed 4 kids out of her body. She looks great. He's like, wow. And starts having an affair. She gets pushed to the side and then feels like she's being forced to walk away with nothing. Now, she was getting $16,000 a month in spousal support. I do believe there was child support on top of that. I don't know. But she's, like I said, one minute she's broke, the next minute she's, taking a ski trip, or she's going to, I think, Acapulco. She doesn't know where she's at. Are her older ones? I know Lee is. Lee wanted her paroled, and Lee said she could live with her. I didn't think the older ones, maybe they've came around since the article that I read was published. Yeah, in the 80s. Can you imagine? I'd take that now. Like, I would take that now. And she said her lawyer's retainer, this other next lawyer that she was going to try to hire, had a $10,000 retainer. She didn't have $10,000, so he took the necklace she always wore. I can't imagine if I had $10,000 hanging around my neck. Like, I would just be constantly like, is it still here? Is it still here? I couldn't do it. She just had to find the deals. She wasn't shopping at Nordstrom. She was shopping at, what is that? Off the Rack? Nordstrom Rack? Whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. The cheaper stuff. Sales. Good night, Haley. Sweet dreams. She needed plastic surgery, not red rum. Get another sugar daddy. Nordstrom Rack. Thank you. I had a combination. On her rack. Iris. My ex and I shared 2 children, and he paid way less than Dan. Also, he tortured us by living near us with other women and their children, but yet he didn't unalive them. I am very glad to see that, Tammy. But yeah, like I said, Dan wasn't innocent. Linda wasn't innocent. I don't believe that. We'll never get their side of the story. We're only hearing Betty's, and I don't know exactly. I know he's got to lay foundations and stuff for things, but my goodness, can we get to the crime? Dancing all around it. Also, I've seen her, I think, actually cry once, and that was the very first day of her testimony, at the very beginning of her testimony. And the reason I say that she was really crying, she was actually crying then, her face turned bright red, and you could tell what she was saying was upsetting her, because she was talking about back to when her and Dan got together and that sort of thing. You could tell that she was truly upset with that. The rest of these times when she's teared up, I don't believe that, because her face isn't getting to be that red, and she comes out of it very, very quickly. So I think that's not authentic. thank you, because I had to live my kid. You had to love my kids more, and they are now healthy adults. Yes. Great. 100% better than Vallow. Oh no. No. Yikes, Carmen. Carmen coming in hot. Betty is just a beach and not the good, relaxing kind, the dirty water kind. Yes. You would be mad with your body and your life gone to an a-hole. Yes. When everything was turning around in her head, like everything was spinning. Yeah. All right. Lori has better hair. That's the one. That's it. That's all we're giving Lori. I do not flash fan. You are telling stories. All right. Push and play.
There, after the hearings in December, did there start being a problem with the support payments? Were you receiving the support payments?
No,
And why not?
I don't know why not.
Okay, at any point in time, did Dan tell you, was there any information given to you as why the payments were delayed?
Well, when Tricia Smith came on the case, the check didn't show up on the first of the month like it was supposed to. And she said, just wait and see what he does. And so we waited, and it didn't come until like the 28th of the month. And his excuse was that the court order did not say that my monthly money was due and payable on the 1st. So he was going to take advantage of another little tiny loophole and make me basically do without it for the next month. And so I had to pay Tricia Smith to rewrite the court order and get that little loophole sewn up.
Do you have a recollection at this time as to whether there was a 2 or 3 month delay in getting your check after the court hearing, getting the support?
I know it was a mess. We didn't get it like we were supposed to. Oh, and he filed an appeal too.
Now, during February, did either one of your boys have, when is Kim's birthday?
January 24th.
And did you try to have contact with Kim on her birthday, call her and talk to her?
Yes,
And were you able to do that?
I reached the machine, so I didn't get to talk to her. And then she was not given the message.
In February, what is your boys' birthdays?
14th for Rhett and the 23rd for Danny.
In 1987, were you trying to see your boys on their birthdays?
Yes, they were going skiing for a week, and there was the Friday before they left with a day off from school, and that was Rhett's birthday, and I wanted to have them on the Friday before they left with Dan for a week vacation, and he wouldn't let me have them.
Okay.
And then when I called when they were skiing on their birthday, on Danny's birthday and stuff, he wouldn't let me talk to them.
Was Dan home with the boys on that
On the
Friday?
ski trip?
No, on the Friday before when you wanted it.
No, Dan was at work, and the boys had no school, and there was really no reason I thought that they couldn't come, but he just wouldn't let them come.
Were you upset about that?
Of course.
Now, did you eventually hire Miss Smith?
Yes, the same day that Dr. Nelson told me about her, I went and met her. And see, we were on this real,
Stand.
And did you do something quickly to try to get her hired?
because of the reconsideration that was going to happen. No matter what attorney I had, it was already a scheduled tick-tock legal thing. We had so many days to do the reconsideration. And yes, I hired her right before the reconsideration was to be done.
And how were you able to pay for her?
She had me sign a mortgage against my house.
Now, at this period of time, you still had no court-ordered visitation in 1987?
Right.
And did you still have no right to have contact with your children?
Right.
And were you still talking to your children?
As much as I could, yes.
And when they would call you with problems, were you trying to answer their problems?
They still considered me mom, and they still called me with all their problems. And yes, I took care of everything that they could reach me with.
At the time that, when you had hired Mrs. Smith, had any discovery up to that point been done at all in regards to what assets you might have or community assets you might have that you can use?
No, Jaffe did nothing. Hargreaves did nothing. Glucksman was going to, but he didn't have time. And so I'm on the fourth attorney, and nothing had been done yet about research into what we had.
Okay. And in the spring of 1987, were any depositions scheduled for Mr. Broderick?
Yes,
Were those continued at any time?
yes.
Okay. And do you know how many times those were continued?
Several times. One time Dan said there was a mix-up, and I don't know, for different reasons they were continued. And
Was that something that you agreed to?
no,
Now, at that time, what was the status of the court that you were in? Was it an open courtroom where they were conducting open business?
the one hearing I had where Mr. Hargreaves was in charge, he agreed against my wishes right in the courtroom to seal the court and the records and the proceedings. That was my first time in court, and they were sealed from my first time there.
Okay. And when you say sealed, what did that mean?
That meant that when we were having a proceeding about my divorce, there was no one allowed to be watching.
Okay, so it didn't.
No one except the principals and their attorneys were allowed in the courtroom. And they even taped up the windows so people couldn't look in.
And how about the court file? Were people able to go to the court file and see what was going on in your case?
No, the court file was also sealed, which meant that nobody but the principals in the case could have access.
Now, who was sometime in, at the time that you went in 1987, were you ever assigned a judge different than Judge Jones?
Yes, then we went to, for some reason, ended up going to Judge Tony Joseph.
Okay. And when you went to Tony Joseph, was he in a family law court?
It was in this building, but it was for contempt actions. So no, I don't think so.
Well, you went to, the next judge you saw was Tony
Tony
Joseph.
Joseph, in
And
this building.
what happened when you went into the courtroom the first time that you went to that court?
It was a longer center aisle, and as we walked down the center aisle, it was Tricia Smith and myself and Dan Broderick, and his attorney was behind us. And the judge looked up and saw Dan and said, "Ah, Mr. Broderick, to what do we owe the honor?"
And what was the response?
Well, Dan said hi. They were obviously friends, and my attorney said, "Excuse me, Your Honor, we're here for a proceeding."
And at that point in time, did you object to the judge here, that judge hearing your proceedings?
Well, he explained on the record what a longtime, good personal friend he was of my husband's, how they had worked on committees and boards of directors, et cetera, for many years. And he held my husband in very high regard and esteem. Those are as close as I can get his exact words. And he said, "Is that a problem for you, Mrs. Broderick?" And my attorney told me to say yes. And I said, do I have a choice? And he said no.
Okay. And from that point on, for the next year, did Judge Joseph end up being the judge that heard all the actions in this case?
From that very first day, he retained jurisdiction, which meant that, yes, he would hear all the actions in that case.
Now, when he would hear the actions in the case, did he always remain in this courtroom, or did he move to various courts in the county?
He moved from here to juvenile court, so I had to go to a proceeding in front of him in juvenile court in Kearney Mesa somewhere on Meadowlark, and then he was moved to Vista, and we had to go to proceedings in front of him up in Vista Courthouse.
So the case wasn't reassigned, it stayed with Tony Joseph's.
Yes.
Okay. During that period of time, did you at any time write into the court file?
That was earlier when Mr. Jaffe told me to go check out the court file. Yes.
And did you go check out the court file?
Yes.
And did you write it?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of writing in the court file?
It was the first time I had seen a lot of the papers that Dan filed, I guess, in the very beginning of these proceedings, way back in September, October, 85. And they were just filled with inaccuracies and total lies. And I'm a school teacher, and I correct things, and I corrected it. And I circled things and wrote in the margin, and I corrected it.
Okay. And at some point in time, when you were in Judge Joseph's court, did anything happen to that court file?
It disappeared.
Did you know where it went to?
Nobody knew where it went to.
Do you know how the court file, was there anything do you know how the court file got re-put together?
I to this day don't know if it got put together.
In this time in 1987, how was the communication between you and Dan? Had it changed at all?
I don't believe there was any. I had Tricia Smith, and so she would communicate with Dan's lawyer, communicate with Dan, and he'd communicate with his lawyer, communicate with my lawyer, communicate with me.
Were the arrangements for visitation still the same? You would talk through the children, and then they would talk to Dan, and then
Yes.
he would decide sometime later?
Right.
Okay. The word, you've heard obviously the tapes and know that you've written it a number of times, and you've referred to Linda Kolkena as the cunt.
Yes.
Where was it that you first heard that word and associated it with Linda Kolkena?
Gail Forbes is a very funny person, and she uses that word.
So it was Gail Forbes who,
When Gail Forbes saw the picture,
was it Gail Forbes who just
yes,
introduced that word to you?
Right.
Okay. Was there times that, and during this period of time, was Linda's voice coming on the answering machine at times?
yes,
And were you leaving messages on that answering machine?
yes, and the machine's now been on 86. We're halfway into 87 by now, so I was pretty fed up with the answering machine routine.
Okay.
I was real sick of it.
What was the purpose of, I mean, what was going on with you that you would leave those messages?
Same.
Well, the reasons that you've indicated before in 1986, as far as the only power that you had, did you still feel that way in 1987?
No, I felt much worse
And why did you feel much worse about that?
because, as we're going over each little incident, I'm saying how I felt about the little incident. But when it was happening way back then, I felt that everything was cumulative. It was one thing and then another thing and then another thing. And by the time we're in now, which is early 87, I was beyond of craziness and tolerance. And I was just nuts about trying to get a settlement. It was over 2 years after he walked out. I'd been through 4 lawyers. I'd been thrown in jail. The house was sold forcibly. He got the bifurcation, sole custody, no visitation. And I was just I was so stressed in 87. And you can see it in the diary. My writing is like all over the place. And I wasn't functioning at all. And we're getting to the point where Ruth Roth comes along. And I was just screaming and yelling in that machine every chance I got. I'd had it.
Had there been events that had already happened that you felt were events that had really hurt up to that point in time? Any particular ones?
The final event and the most traumatic event because of the accumulation, I was very traumatized by the forcible sale of the house because I didn't know he could do that. And I thought it was rude and hardball and not a way to handle things. And then when the bifurcation came along, I didn't know that could happen. I didn't know you could do that and get a divorce and take sole custody. I didn't know that could happen. And then when I went to his house we cut off all the money and I went there very polite and said, let's talk, what's going on here? And then he had me arrested. It was just, I was so traumatized by being put in a police car and handcuffed and mugshot and thrown in jail when I was merely trying to talk to him that I never really recovered from November 1st, 1986. I had been absolutely traumatized by the way he treated me. And then he wouldn't discuss anything with me. He had already taken everything. And so November 1st, 86 was like the end of the end for me. And then beyond that, I was just so stressed. I wasn't making any sense at all. Ask Tricia Smith.
And during the time when the children were coming over your house and talking to you, how you've described them on the phone and the problems they had, was that continuing in 1987?
The kids were doing worse too. Their problems were getting bigger, and they were doing really by the point in time we are now, early 87. All 4 children were doing very badly.
And did you start finding out in that period of time about things that had happened even before you split up with Dan? Did you find out anything about your dentist or your personal doctors?
I found out that Dan had been sending Linda there for years to our personal doctors.
And was that even before you were split up?
Yes.
Okay. And were you hearing anything from the doctors that they were being told by Linda Kolkena.
Yeah, Linda Kolkena was very talkative and very proud of certain accomplishments of hers. And she was very talkative at the dentist and stuff about what she had done and what she had accomplished and what a bitch I was and everything. And I would hear that back from these people. These people were my.
Are you saying I don't know what 86 means? I know what 86 means. I used to work in a restaurant. Thank you very much. I was the hostess. So yeah, so stressed in 86, she decided 86 people. Restaurant term, you don't get it. I got it. Thanks. I knew it. I knew what that term meant before you were ever a thought or a gleam or a twinkle in my eye or your dad's eye, Carmen.
My personal physicians and things for over 10 years before Linda came along. So they had a lot of loyalty to me.
Okay. And
No.
were you involved, were you trying to stay involved in the children's school?
Always, yes.
Okay. And did you go down there
Sorry.
and participate in activities at the school when you could?
Yes, I was room mother for several years at different things, and I worked on auctions and parties and clubs. And
At some times when the children were with Dan and you had no visitation rights, were you getting calls from the school about the condition of the children?
yes, the teachers would call me because they felt they could talk to me because they knew me, and they didn't really know Dan. He was never present at anything at school. So they.
Hey, Grandma. How you doing? Thank you for popping in. Carmen, a car hop is something from probably like the 1950s, although Sonic kind of still has them on the roller skates, but they would bring your food out. I can't remember the hot dog thing what was that called? I don't know. But anyway, they bring the food to your car. You don't ever get out of the car. They put it on a tray on your window. Flashman is trying to, it's an old joke towards me, Carmen. That's all. But I think Sonic would be your best bet to see a modern day car hop.
They would call me and see if I could help deal with the problem with the children.
Was there any calls about some children going to school very sick?
Yes, and this was over several different years. It wasn't one incident. Several different teachers had called me about Rhett being inappropriate, especially Rhett, the youngest, being inappropriately dressed, having holes in his shoes and the shoes flapping so that his foot was on the ground, and the teacher thought he'd fall down the stairs and get hurt. So she wanted to have new shoes. A different teacher had him in school in the middle of winter in little shorts and a little shirt, and I went to Nordstrom and got him clothes and went straight to school and dressed him in better clothes. And they were appearing at school to not be cared for children. Nobody was supervising how they went off in the morning.
Sometimes would you get calls out of being too sick at school and needed to get a hold of someone to take them?
Yes, I went to pick the kids up at school. Teachers were supposed to call Dan because he was sole custodian, but they couldn't reach Dan. So then they'd call me, and particularly one time, dropped everything, went running to school to pick up Rhett. And as I was picking him up, Dan already had him and was driving away, and he was very sick. And Dan took him to the office with him.
Okay. Now showing you what's been marked as H and I for identification. Do you recognize these shoes?
Those are some of them, yes.
And these are some of the ones that the children were wearing to school?
Yes, not even the worst ones.
Okay. And how about what has been identified L for identification? Do you recognize that?
That was Kim.
Okay. Is this the condition that Kim usually liked to wear her shoes?
No, and you can tell from all these things, they were good products to start with. Very expensive, very good products. It was just, they were not cared for.
You've seen, there was a dress that was marked as K for identification. Do you remember this dress?
That's from the rats in the rental home.
And what has been marked as J for identification? Do you recognize these clothes?
That's only one item from a bunch of clothes I saved to take to court to show the court during the custody thing that these children were not being cared for. There were other bathing suits and other shirts that were torn and stained. And again, they're good products. It's just no one was supervising what the children wore.
All right. Grandma left and Gabby showed up. Oh, Grandma's back. They're not the same person. What's up, Gabby? Had to test. Had to do a test. Also, I had shoes, not Nordstrom shoes, so they weren't like expensive shoes. But when I was in high school, they looked horrible because I wore them all the time. They were my favorite shoes. I wore the crap out of them. Like, I literally wore them out. But it wasn't because my mom wouldn't buy me new shoes. I don't know, Zach. It's been really itchy lately. Grandma, you on at 9? You on? Yeah. Are you on at 9 tonight? Good grief. If I can learn how to talk, that would be great. I have seen your work boots. And your work boots are expensive. They could be bought at Nordstrom. Gabby, I'm not reading that. Oh, that was the best grandma chat ever. I don't care why you did it, Grandma. It was hilarious. Right. I shouldn't play now.
There was a, do you remember a time on having problems with the kids at school because of lice in their hair?
Yes.
Okay. And did you get a call about taking care of that?
Not particularly from the school. I picked the boys up on a Friday night, and they both had a terrible infestation, if that's what you call it, of lice, both of them.
In 1987, did you have any particular feeling about how you were feeling about being? Did you feel like you were alone at that time, or any feelings that you had of isolation or anything?
Well, I was alone ever since '85, living in the house all by myself, and I had no family around. And I had lots of friends, but they were social friends. They weren't the kind of friends that you go to with really deep problems, personal problems. So I really didn't feel like I had anybody to confide in. And I felt isolated, yes. I felt alone.
Okay.
I felt afraid.
And by that time in the divorce proceedings, did you feel that you had any power base whatsoever?
No, because I didn't. I had no real way to defend myself against Dan, and I had no way to get back at him at all. And so when he would do stuff to me, all I could do would call him names back. And he hated it.
Now, in 1987, were you supposed to have the children for Easter?
Yes.
Okay. And was that something where there was plans made for that?
Yes, extensive plans. I was supposed to have them for the whole week.
Okay. And had that been arranged ahead of time?
Yes, we had lots of plans. Literally, I had written a schedule where each child could pick one day, and then they'd get to say what we did that day.
Did Ruth Roth come into the picture sometime around then?
Right around then, yes.
Okay. And what was your attitude about Ruth Roth?
Well, she wouldn't talk to me or listen to at all why I might have been like I was when she met me, screaming and yelling and very, very angry at what I'd been put through. She kept saying she didn't want to listen to what I'd been put through. Like, well, if you don't listen to what has happened here, you're not going to understand why I'm like this and why this kid situation is like this and why. I mean, you have to hear what we've all been put through for all these years. And she didn't want to listen to anything. She just wanted to know what I wanted to do with the kids that week. And I said, what I wanted to do with the kids that week was get a settlement. I have to get a settlement of this whole thing. And Tricia Smith was on the job and working as hard as she could to get a settlement. but she wasn't getting any cooperation from Dan.
Now, did it seem like things were happening fairly fast at that time when you saw Ruth Roth?
From the November 1st arrest until the time of Ruth Roth, everything happened really fast. You know, I got arrested. I was frantic for the money. I got Hargreaves. Hargreaves was a disaster.
Then I have another board that shows January through June of 1987. It's been marked H5 for identification. If I could be able to put that up.
Certainly.
And Your Honor, I would ask the court to take some judicial notice of some court proceedings that took place during this period of time. On January 7th of 1987, there was a motion for reconsideration of support filed by would be the defendant to respond to the action of Elizabeth Broderick.
Did you just notice that?
January 12th, there was the service of an order to show cause in a contempt hearing that was filed on that day.
Take notice of that.
There was on January 14th, a order to show cause contempt.
Take judicial notice of that.
There was on January 15th, an amended order to show cause support filed by the defendant, who would have been responding in that case, Elizabeth Broderick.
Take judicial notice of that.
On January 26th, there was a declaration filed in regards to the order to show cause contempt, and the declaration raised support and a summary of expenses and an order in regards to the support.
That also was filed by the defendant.
Yes, that's right here, defendant filed.
Take judicial notice of that.
No, I believe defendant filed, that was filed, she filed a response to that declaration.
January 26, 87 was a response declaration filed by the defendant's attorney at the time.
Yes.
Take judicial notice of that.
On the 29th of January, there was another declaration with support points and authorities, and a declaration of a response declaration to the order to show cause. Points and authorities and declaration of a CPA raised support.
Take judicial notice of that.
That was filed by the defendant. On February 3rd, there was a contempt hearing that was continued. There was a hearing in regards to custody, visitation, and support that was continued. An income and expense declaration, and an ex parte appearance seeking visitation, and a motion to change venue that was filed by the defendant.
Take judicial notice of that.
There was a hearing on February 3rd, contempt hearing that was continued.
You just got February 3rd.
Go to February 9th.
I'm sorry, February 9th, a contempt hearing that was continued.
Take judicial notice of that.
On the 18th of February, there was service of an order to show cause, a psychiatric evaluation, and that was filed on the defendant's attorney, points and authorities, and a declaration waived in regards to custody, and a declaration in regards to attorney fees.
Take judicial notice of that.
On February 20th, there was a declaration filed in regards to attorney fees. And on the 23rd, there was a hearing in regards to psychiatric evaluation, a hearing in regards to change of venue that was set on this date but continued. There was a hearing in regards to custody that was taken off calendar.
Take judicial notice of
There
that.
was no appearance by the defendant.
Yes.
Board of attorneys, is that correct?
No, I believe it was just no appearance by the defendant.
Take judicial notice of that.
There was on February 25th, there was notice of hearings.
Filed on the attorney bill.
Yes, on attorneys.
Take notice of that.
On February 27th, there was service of a responsive declaration that was filed on defendant's attorney.
Judicial notice of that.
On March 2nd, on March 3rd, I'm sorry, there was a hearing on attorney fees and costs that was continued Again, there was no appearance by the defendant.
Just notice that.
There was personal service on a order to show cause contempt hearing on March 13th.
Just notice that.
On March 17th, there was a hearing in regards to custody and support. Was taken off calendar with no
I could
appearance
push
by
the
any of the
L.
parties.
I don't know why I'm so
Just notice
happy.
that.
I
March
didn't know.
26th, there was personal service and other contempt in order to show cause
Everything has
contempt.
been off. It's
Just
had
notice
zero power.
On March
I
30th,
could
there was
push the
further
L and
proceedings
fast
in
forward
regards to
through
the
this guy. I
contempt to
would.
continue.
But
And a motion for peremptory disqualification was filed by the defendant.
Did you just notice that?
There was contempt, a contempt hearing, the defendant received a 5-day contingent sentence that was suspended
April 2nd.
April 2nd.
Did you just notice that?
There was a hearing on April 21st, a contempt hearing that was continued.
Did you just notice that?
Contempt hearing set, there was a contempt hearing that was set for the 22nd. There was a trial setting conference on the 24th, set for this date with appearances by attorneys only.
Did you just notice that?
On
There
April,
was no offense by either side in the April 22nd hearing.
yeah, on the contempt hearing, that matter, there was no
No
appearance.
appearance, but the appearance by attorneys only was for the trial setting conference on April 24th.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
On April 29th, there was a receipt of the order to show cause in the contempt hearings.
Did you just notice that?
There was a notice on May. On May 28th, there was a contempt hearing.
Did you just notice that?
There was a sentence of 25 days. And eventually 19 were suspended, and there was a receipt of an order to show cause on a contempt.
Did you just notice that?
On June 8th, there was a contempt hearing. It was set for this date, no appearance by either party.
Did you just notice that?
On June 11th, there was receipt of records and documents that were ordered sealed.
Did you just notice that?
On the 22nd of June, there was a contempt hearing which was continued by telephone, no appearance by any of the parties.
Did you notice that?
And on June 29th, there was an application for order extending time to file appellant's opening brief.
Did you just notice that?
Now, Mrs. Broderick, when your attorney would get paperwork in regards to the divorce, were you getting copies of that paperwork?
Yes.
And at that time, were you at least trying to schedule some time where you could be present during those hearings?
Yes.
Now, when you were supposed to have the Easter vacation with the boys, did you go to pick the boys up?
Yes, they wanted me to be there early, so I'd be right in front of the school.
And did you go there?
Yes, I was there early.
And had you made preparation as far as activities, food?
Yes, I did all the shopping and preparing.
Sustained.
What kind of preparations did you do?
Ask and answer.
Sustained.
I don't believe I asked her what the preparations were.
She just testified what she did. She bought food, etc. Nobody moved to strike the answer, so the answer's in. Go ahead.
Did, when you arrived there early, what happened?
Dan was pulling away from the school with Rhett in the car.
Now, when Dan was pulling away with Rhett in the car, what kind of car were you driving?
I had a little rental Chevrolet because the Suburban wasn't getting fixed.
And did you do anything when you saw Dan pulling away with Rhett?
Yes, I went after him. He was in the MG Midget.
And did anyone tell you that the boys were not going to be able to spend that week with you
No.
before that?
I think Tricia Smith may have called me just before I left the house and said something about she didn't think that I could have visitation, but I promised the boys I'd be there early, and so I went there early anyway. But I thought I was getting them.
And when you, what did you do when you say you chased him? What did you do?
I followed him around the corner because he didn't know it was me. Nobody would know it was me in that little car.
And so what happened?
So he pulled over, and I pulled over next to him, and I didn't get out of the car. And there were two little cars. So, and I don't know if he didn't have the top down, but his window was open, and I said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said that Ruth Roth said that I couldn't have visitation for the week because I wouldn't stop using bad language. And Rhett was crying.
And at some point later on, did you find out Were the boys told anything else about your visitation, Danny?
Well, Danny was told that I changed my mind. That's why they couldn't come to my house for the weekend, is because I changed my mind. And I was absolutely furious that he told them that. And that's when the phone call comes in.
Now, during the time that you went and saw Ruth Roth, you've heard her testimony basically saying that you weren't going to stop using bad words. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Was there a reason for that?
I had felt so overwhelmed and so taken advantage of by Dan Broderick in every aspect of my life. He was still controlling every aspect of my life, my children, my money, my home, absolutely everything. But I wouldn't let him control what I said or what I thought.
Did Ruth Roth tell you during that meeting that what you said was going to be known to Dan Broderick?
Yes.
Now, you've heard a conversation that you had with Danny that was tape recorded. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And was there anything unusual that was happening during Danny at that period of time?
Yes, Danny was suicidal. He was threatening to run away from home. He was extremely upset and angry at the position that he found himself in. He hadn't gone to court yet, I don't think, to speak to judges. He wanted to be with me, and he was being told he couldn't be with me, and he was very upset. And Ruth Roth told me that it was healthy for Danny to vent his anger.
Okay. And did you find Danny during that period of time on a number of occasions was venting some anger he never vented before?
He was hysterical on that phone call. It was the Easter vacation, and he felt horrible. He wanted to be with me. Everything was changed, and he was told it was changed because I wouldn't stop calling Dan names. So he thought if I would just agree to stop calling Dan names, which is what he was told by his father, then maybe he could come live with me.
Okay. And was there a reason that you continued to call Dan names?
Well, there was never that agreement that if I stopped calling Dan names, the boys would come live with me. That was just what was going on with Ruth Roth and Dan at the time. And I thought Tricia Smith was working on a settlement and the boys would be living with me shortly anyway, that there would be an end to this thing. We're still back in March of '87, and I kept thinking there was going to be an end to this any minute.
Okay. Now, were there other times when you talked to Danny during that period of time where he was expressing anger different than he had before?
Yes.
As you sit and listen to that tape, do you think that your language was appropriate?
No, of course not.
Okay.
Danny was very upset and crying, and I was very upset and crying on that tape. It was a very upsetting time for all of us.
So why were you using the language? Do you know?
I was just going rah, 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 rah. I was just mad. I was just trapped, and I wanted to get it over with, and that's the way it came out. A lot of frustration.
Now, when you hired Tricia Smith, did you have a understanding of what you were hiring her for?
Yes, I liked her very much. She was extremely competent. She took control of this case and went in for that reconsideration like that. She requested Dan's documents, as we said, for the first time. She was going to do what you have to do to get a settlement, requested all of his tax returns and information on all of her investments. She scheduled depositions for the first time of Dan to ask him these questions in person. And I think she told me when I hired her that she'd have it over with by May.
Yeah. Now, did there end up being some problems in getting that discovery? Was she able to get it?
No, she was not able to get it.
And during the time that Tricia Smith represented you, what did most of her work consist of?
Most of her work consisted of representing me on criminal contempt charges, with no time being able to be spent on settling the divorce.
Okay. Now, at the time that you were in on contempt charges, you did get some jail time, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, was there anybody who was making decisions? Was there a jury that was making that, a judge?
Judge Joseph in sealed courtrooms.
Okay. And I've read off that there was contempt hearings in April, May, and June. Were you attending those contempt hearings?
Yes, I had to.
Okay. During the time that there were going through those hearings, was there ever a time where you made a request as to being able to have access to the children on the phone?
Yes, most of these contempts were because
Excuse me, non-responsive.
So, first of all, answer, did you make the request to?
yes,
Okay. And what was the purpose of making the request?
It's because this was the continuing, ongoing problem with the answering machine keeping me from the kids, and I'd get angry, and then they'd tape it on purpose, and then they'd go to court and say, she's calling me names, and I'd get sent to jail and fined, and they wouldn't stop, they wouldn't get off the machine. So after it was my contention in court.
Okay.
Did you feel at that time that by calling your children that you were annoying Dan Broderick?
No, I thought them on the answering machine was annoying, harassing, and bothering me, which was the point of Linda being on the answering machine. If they would just get off the answering machine, my kids and I were back and forth with no problem ever.
Now, at some point in time, when you first got sentenced, did you write a letter to Judge Joseph?
Yes, I did.
And did you eventually get out of jail sooner than the days you were sentenced to?
He told my attorney that.
Okay. Did you get out of jail sooner than had been contemplated by
Yes.
that? Okay. And at the time that when you got out of jail, how would you describe your feelings at that time?
I had written Judge Joseph this letter that said that this is not the legal system that I learned about in school and that I later taught about in school. Where is my public trial by jury? This is a private trial by self-professed, longtime good friend of my husband's, and I thought it was gang rape. And I said that in that letter. I thought I was being grossly unfairly treated and taken advantage of. And I said I was going to complain about him to the Judicial Council of the State of California for his handling of this case. Tricia Smith proved in that courtroom.
Sustained.
During the period of time that you were, after you got out of jail, did you start getting served with papers again?
The day I got home, yes, I got more papers.
Now, during the time that Tricia Smith was, during this period of time when they were, when work was being done on your case, was there any background being done on Mr. Broderick?
Yes,
And did you have any concerns about his influences with the court?
yes.
And why was that?
Because when Tricia Smith was doing all of her investigative work insofar as what we had and Dan's qualifications as a parent, she came upon his drunk driving records and how some of the tickets were missing and some of them were fixed and some of them were for driving too slow, and she thought that was very suspicious.
Did you find any that a number of his court files had ended up being missing from the system?
Yes.
It's a good place to take the recess, Mr. Earl.
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our afternoon recess at this time. Please remember the admonition. See you at 3:00.
Now, in 87,
Fastest break in history. Sorry for the little technical thing there earlier. I was trying to leave the studio. I've been trying to fix my camera. I don't know why it was choppy. So that was my fault. That was all me. But I think it did fix my camera. So, sorry.
and were you having problems with him in regards to clothes and taking other items?
Not just in 87, yes.
And what kind of problems were they?
Typical mother-daughter teenage problems is that she'd take swimsuits, earrings, sunglasses, makeup, rings, clothes, shoes, stockings, everything. But being that we didn't live together in the same house, she'd take my stuff and go to Dan's house, and then I had the restraining order, so I couldn't go get my things back.
Okay, are there times that you did go over to, that you did go over to Cyprus and get those items back?
Many times, yes.
Okay, were you having problems getting Kim to return them when you would call?
Yes, it seemed a one-way street. You know, she'd borrow all the stuff because my stuff she thought was better than her stuff when she'd get to the house, and it would be gone. And then the next time she'd come, she'd borrow more stuff, and it would be gone. It was a one-way street that way. And then I'd occasionally go over and scoop my stuff up and get it back
Okay.
and send it to the cleaners, and the cycle would begin again.
Now, during the, at any time, well, sometime after you got out of jail in 1987, did you end up having somebody live at your house for some period of time?
I had Maria living there for a while, and then I had a lady from Canada and her daughter living there for a while.
Okay. And do you remember what her name was?
Lucy Peridin,
Yeah.
and her daughter Laura.
And you had mentioned before that at least in 1985 that you were involved in some community activities. Were you still involved in those community activities?
Not really. At this stage, I was too involved in trying to get a settlement, and I was pretty stressy, and I didn't feel capable of performing any of the duties that went along with those committees and things. So I had basically dropped out of everything.
Yeah. Did at some point you try at least to stay in some of them?
Yes.
Okay. And did, was there any problems that you were having with Lee during this period of time?
Yes.
And what problems were you having with Lee?
I'm not real good on exactly which problems at which time. But Lily had a problem at school. Is that what we're talking about?
Did she call you in regards to helping with that problem
Yes.
at school?
Yes.
Yeah. And was there a time that Lee had, when she had a problem in school and because of drugs?
Yes.
And did she do anything at that time?
Dan let Lee leave the private school she was in and go to La Jolla High, which I was against. And she wasn't even there a few months, and she got in this trouble of getting caught with drugs. She had had no trouble at Bishop's, but she got in with the wrong crowd at La Jolla High, and it was a disaster from the very beginning. And so she didn't get thrown out of school. She was supposed to meet with Dan and the principal and Lee, but she was so afraid of Dan getting mad at her that she never went back to school.
Okay. Did she run away at that time?
Yes, she ran away from Dan's house. That's where she was living.
Did you do anything to find her at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
She called me. I knew where she was, kind of.
Okay. And did she come to you at all?
Yes, and she lived with me on and off.
Okay. Was there any problems when she came to live with you? Was there any problems with that Dan was saying with her living with you that you know of?
I don't know about what Dan said, but there are problems that I had with Lee living with me.
Okay. At any time, did you have to? Were the problems enough that you had to do something to try to, where she was just missing, where neither you nor Dan knew where she was?
At one point, she took one of my cars and disappeared, yes.
And did you do anything to try to find her at that time?
I reported the car stolen to the San Diego police. But they couldn't find her, or
Did you do anything? Did you hire anybody to look for her?
not that time I didn't.
Okay. Did, at some point in time, was she missing at a point where you hired someone to look for her?
Yeah,
If you can just tell me when that was, you know.
it's the next time.
Okay. The, in the summer of 1987, did you have any plans to go anywhere? Go out of state on a vacation?
The Hawaii trip. Are we off the Lee and the Kim and all
Yes,
that?
let's go back to a time where we know we were in 1987.
Okay.
Summer of 1987, did you have any plans to go anywhere?
I bought at the Bishop's auction a trip to Hawaii for the children and myself. And that's important that I bought it at the auction, which is why when we were leaving and Dan wouldn't let the kids come, I couldn't get my money back. My money went to the Bishop's school. It didn't go to the hotel or the airlines or anything.
Did you make plans for the children to go to that?
As much as I could with no custody, as I discussed it with the kids and they wanted to go, I wanted them to go. It was summertime. They had no other plans. There didn't seem to be any reason to me that they couldn't go. But Dan wouldn't let them go at the last minute.
Okay, so that was a decision that was made at the last minute.
Exactly. The day I was leaving, they couldn't go.
Okay, now what kind of place did you go to? Was it a,
It was a family place. It was all families and children and on the waterfront beach. And it was a very family place. And I had a 2-bedroom condo.
okay, and did you go on that trip?
I was torn of whether to go or not the day I was leaving because I'd never been to Hawaii, neither had the children. And my choice was go to Hawaii by myself or not go at all and lose the whole trip. So I did end up going by myself just to see what Hawaii was like.
Did you ever tell the children that they couldn't go?
No, they know they were supposed to go.
And again, she was broke, remember? Trips to Hawaii are not cheap. Not that I know, because I've never been. I just know they're
And-
expensive.
If I could put up another board, Your Honor, for
Certainly. Page dash 6.
it would be July through December, Your Honor, 1997.
So Mark.
That's true. Must be a place where all the unalivers go. All right, if he's doing this judicial notice thing, Gabby, you're going to get your wish if I'm speeding him up.
Your Honor, I would ask the court to take judicial notice that on July 6th, 1987, there was a contempt hearing that was continued.
Take judicial notice of that.
Okay, on July 10th, there was a trial setting for the date of July 10th. There was no appearance by any parties.
This date that was served on the attorneys.
Yeah, that was the date that was originally set, and they did not have a trial, and there was no appearances.
Take judicial notice of that.
There was, on July 22nd, there was a notice of hearing that was served
Take judicial notice of that.
Served on the attorney's.
on the attorneys only. That's July 22nd.
Take judicial notice of that.
And on August 12th, there was an OSC contempt filed.
Take judicial notice of that.
On August 19th, there was receipt of request that suspended sentence be imposed.
Take notice of that.
On August 25th, there was a contempt hearing continued. File was not available. Appearance by Mr. Berry, and no appearance by defendant or Mr. Broderick.
Take judicial notice of that.
On
Yes, I
September
know
9th, there was a filing of appellant's opening brief.
I don't want to hear all
Take notice
these.
of that.
On July 21st, September 21st, there was a contempt hearing which was continued.
Take notice of that.
On September 22nd, there was a contempt hearing which was continued.
Take notice of that.
On September 24th, there was an order to show cause regarding telephone orders that was filed by the defendant.
Take notice of that.
There was a hearing on October 5th, the contempt hearing without calendar file was not available. There was no appearance by either party. It was received for records to take hearings.
Take notice of that.
On October 26th, there was a
Take a Gab. 1600.
Heard at some
All
other
right.
time.
Probably broke it.
Yes.
The now after the car accident, what did you do? Did Lee, when she took the car, did anything happen?
That's how I got the
It's
car
better than
back. The
listening.
San Diego police never got it as a stolen car. It was involved in an accident.
Okay. And did you do anything with Lee at that time?
I met her in Ocean Beach where the accident was, and she got in my car, yes.
Okay. And what did you do?
We went straight to the McDonald Center in La Jolla.
Okay. And was she upset about you checking her into the center at that time?
Oh, we were both upset. She wasn't as upset as I was. I was upset about her having a drug problem and being dropped out of school and stealing the car and stealing money from me and being missing from home. I was more upset than she was. But she wasn't happy about being checked into the McDonald Center.
That at some point did Lee end up being missing from McDonald's?
I think she only stayed 2 or 3 days and then she walked out. It's not a lockup drug rehab. She was free to walk out. She walked out in the middle of the night and called me from UTC and said, come get her, about midnight one night.
Did well, at some point in time, did you look for her after she left that hospital?
I didn't know she had left until she called me, and then I went directly and picked her up. And then I tried to get her back in because I convinced her that that was a mistake walking out, go back in, and they wouldn't take her back in because once you walk out, you're out. They wouldn't take her.
Okay. Do you remember at a time where you ever hired some people to go find Lee?
Yes, she lived with me for a while after the McDonald thing, and I told her if I ever catch you with any, she said she didn't belong in McDonald's, that they were all addicts and this and that, and she wasn't one. I said, okay, I'll believe you, but if I catch you one more time with anything, you're back in. And so I overheard her on a telephone conversation, and the friend said, oh, I've got some rocks or something. And so I knew she was still doing stuff, and she knew I was after her, so she ran away again.
Okay.
And then I hired private investigators, and we privately arrested her.
Now, did you call Dan about trying to get him to help you with your daughter?
Yes,
Okay. And you've heard a phone message that was played here in court in regards to the problems that Lee was having. Do you remember, was that in regards to this?
yes.
And did Dan do anything to help find Lee?
No, he threw her out of the house. He wanted absolutely nothing to do with her, and he wrote her out of his will.
Now, did you check Lee back into a hospital again?
Yes, but this time it was San Luis Rey, and it was a lockup unit. She was going to stay there this time.
What was she like at that time?
She was absolutely furious at me. She was yelling and screaming. She almost threw my purse out the window of the car. She was not happy about being locked up in this place.
Okay. And how did you feel about that?
I was very upset about the whole situation. I didn't know much about drug addiction. I had never seen any kind of drugs. I didn't know how to judge if my own daughter was under the influence or not. I just didn't know the signs to look for. I did not know the seriousness of her problem, but I thought if she went in one of these programs, they would be in a better position to know how bad her problem was. They weren't going to beat her. I was there every day. You know, it wasn't awful. It was a nice place. They had nice food, and they were nice people, but she couldn't run away from this one.
Was there a program there for parents attending and aftercare?
Both at McDonald's and San Luis Rey, the addiction programs are family therapy programs. It's a family problem, and it's treated as such, alcoholism and drug addiction, that the family has to come in for a week of therapy at McDonald's. And I had to go to meetings every night as a parent at San Luis Rey.
Did you go to those meetings?
Yes, every night.
Did Dan attend any of those meetings?
No.
Okay. Now, during the time that you were going through the divorce, did any people try to get you to go into a hospital?
Yes.
And what kind of hospital did they try to get you into?
Lynn McGuire and Hillary Brady tried to send me to a codependency program in Florida.
Okay. Now, these were people who were involved in the legal community, or husbands were involved with Dan?
One of them is married to a lawyer, but they're both involved in alcoholics and codependency treatment as therapists.
Okay. And was there a reason that they were sending you to that kind of hospital?
Yes, they thought that was my problem, is that Dan was an alcoholic and I was in an alcoholic marriage, and I had codependency issues, and that I really needed to go to one of these programs.
Did you go to the program?
At the time they wanted me to. No, I couldn't. I couldn't leave the house in La Jolla empty and go to Florida. It was in the beginning of the divorce, and I was afraid he'd sell the house if I left.
Now, sometime in 1987, did you have some family visit you from back east?
Yes, I had a cousin and his wife and 3 children, and I had my brother Frank and his wife and their 2 children, and I had another family from Eastchester, New York, a mother, father, and 3 children come visit, because I lived near the beach and had a real nice house, and they came to visit.
Okay, and was this during the summer?
Yes.
Okay, and was there a time when you tried to get your children to be able to go with you to a family outing with all their children?
Yes, especially with my brother Frank and his kids. My kids had never met their first cousins that live in Tennessee, and they're very compatible in ages, and it turned out that Mag and Frank went to a convention in Las Vegas and left their children with me, and I wanted to take their children and my children to Warner Springs Ranch so they'd have fun together, and Dan wouldn't let my kids meet their cousins.
Yeah.
Wouldn't let them go.
Was there anything the children were doing? Were they out of town, or were they just...
No, they were home doing nothing in Marston Hills.
Now, around the late fall or early winter of 1987, did you plan a trip to go anywhere?
I think I actually planned that trip during the Christmas holidays. It was a rainy Christmas that year. It was my 3rd Christmas all alone. I was extremely, extremely depressed. In fact, totally suicidal. And I was sitting.
Hey, dog mom. First, your dog is super cute. And 2, no, that's not we kind of agree, or at least I do. I think Betty and Linda and Dan were all awful to each other. I think they all, and I've said this several times, they all did horrible things. They all knew how to push each other's buttons. And they were not nice, for lack, just to put it mildly. I just think Betty she snapped, for lack of a better word there. And she went too far with it, obviously, because you just can't unalive people. You're fine. You're fine. I think they were all bad actors in this. And I think that most of us agree that they were all bad actors in this. I just think that she was, he wasn't right. Linda wasn't right. And Betty wasn't right. I guess Betty was just the most wrong in her actions because of how she ended things, to put it in a nicer way, I guess. But no, you are completely welcome here, and you will not be beat up on. I promise. I promise you that. And also, yeah, don't pay attention to flashing. Yes, absolutely. Yep, everybody is whatever their perspective is and their opinions are. They are welcome. And but no, you will not get beat up on here. Absolutely not. And I will say this too, Dogma. This trial's been eye-opening for a couple of people who were they were on Betty's side, and listening to her and her tell her story and seeing the evidence come out, they've shifted some to not be not on her side, but to not just stand like firmly behind her like maybe they were, because now they're getting the full picture, I guess, instead of the one that the media was giving us and Betty was putting out into the media. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very good way to put it. Betty was extremely resentful, and she definitely were women scorned, and she did go over the top. And they did. And like I said, we'll never hear Dan and Linda's side of it. And this is one of those things. I guess we'll place Dan and Linda together because they were. I always say there's three sides to every story. There's yours, mine, and then there's the truth. And we're not ever going to get that. We'll never get the truth because Betty tells it from her perspective. Dan and Linda tell it from, would if they could, tell it from their perspective. And it's the truth is somewhere in there. And we'll just never know what it was. This was I'm dating myself. This was the first trial I ever watched. It was a second trial Court TV showed. And I mean, I was invested in this thing. But I'm glad that it took you into a career of law. I just was like mesmerized with the whole situation. Because she was everywhere. She was on Oprah. Like there was many series made about her. It's just, she was just everywhere. And it was crazy. So are you an attorney? I'm not a boomer. It's Tooth Capone. Old Tooth Capone. I love Tooth Capone. Oh my goodness. All right, flash fan. I know you had to get a boomer in there once. All right, we got about 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes left of this. Anyone born before 1995 is a boomer? Carmen, I don't know if that includes you or not. You were in 1995. So I guess not.
Sitting in the kitchen, and I had a newspaper, and I was just thinking to myself, I mean, everything's in the toilet here. My whole life is in the toilet here. What can I possibly do to cheer myself up or to make something feel better? And I called a 1-800 number and put a Club Med trip to Tahiti on my credit card. And I thought maybe that would help.
Did it help at all?
No, I took the stress and the fear and everything of the legal stuff with me to Tahiti. And I tossed and turned in Tahiti, and I laid on the beach in Tahiti thinking, what are you doing here? You've got to get home and get this settled. It's not going to go away if you go to Tahiti for 10 days.
Now, did you, when you went to Tahiti, was there any pets that you had possession of?
At that stage, the dogs were back and forth. At that stage, the 2 Shih Tzu little furry dogs that we had were at my house.
Now, I showed you a picture of a dog in their puppy.
Right, that's one.
Was that one of the, and that was Defense WW for identification. Was that one of the dogs?
That's Muffin and the puppies, right?
And whose dogs were they?
They were particularly the boys' dogs. Danny owned Topsy, and Rhett owned Muffin.
And during that period of time when you went to Tahiti, did you do anything with the dogs?
Yes, I called up the boys and said I was going away on a vacation. And I also went up to Pasadena for Christmas, so I was going to be away. And I said, you got to take care of your dogs. So they said, okay, fine. And I drove over there and I dropped the dogs and their food and their little dishes and their leashes and this little foam bed they have that they sleep in.
Now, at that time in 1987, did you have any custody of the boys at all?
No.
And did you have any visitation with the boys?
No.
Did you have other?
Your Honor, I think that was misspoken. There was a lot of visitation. There was no order
I'm
of
sorry.
visitation order.
I
Stipulate to that.
misspoke. Did
Okay, dog mom. I have to defend myself real quick. If you ever go back and watch any of my earlier things, don't believe what I said then, because through the last year and a half of covering trials myself and not watching them as I was before I started a YouTube channel, my opinion has changed a lot. I'll be honest with you, I was very anti-prosecutor for a long time, but I'm not anymore. I'm not pro anything. I've always asked, like, I just want a clean trial. That's it. I want a fair trial. I want a clean trial. And I don't want any, no shenanigans. So if you ever see me being like, I hate prosecutors, I don't. That was that was not me. That's not me now. That was me then, with a very limited scope on some cases I had watched that went badly for the defendant. And it was, there was stuff happening that I didn't like on the state side of things. But now the more I've watched and then sat and kind of analyzed things, I have zero law background. I'm literally just watching them as a juror would. So I've changed my mind a lot, and I'm always I just want a good, clean trial and to me, there is nothing better than a good prosecutor or a very good defense attorney. And to watch those two things happen in a trial is amazing. Unfortunately, just with everything, there's every profession has bad apples. I did not roast I didn't roast the state. In all honesty, what and how her ego was torn down and her extreme resentment of the fact that she worked while he went to school. Yes, we talked about that earlier. It did fuel her. And I understand that why it fueled her anger and her disdain, and it made her angry. My husband and my son and I actually had a conversation kind of around this trial about spousal support, because I was talking about this trial and they were like, I don't think there should be spousal support. I'm like, hold the phone, because, I stayed home with the kids. I stayed home, raised the family, and did everything. And I still do a lot for my family, and I love that. But if my husband was to just up and walk away from me, I would have nothing. Like, I would have nothing. And to me, that wouldn't be fair. So, we had a very long conversation about it. I don't know that we ever came to an agreement on the whole thing. But it was interesting to hear their sides and to like, hey, this is my side because this is what I did. So I always tell everybody told my daughter-in-law, and I will tell anybody that will listen. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Just don't ever let yourself where you can be left in a situation like that. Like, that would be what I learned. So I got to read let me tell you, sometimes prosecutors can definitely mess up. I am not going to be at all offended by any of that. I personally never do. Good. Not every single person in the judicial system is exactly ethical, and I will leave it at that. And yep, I will agree with you. I will not. You will never get over the Cosby shoulder pads with the Cosby sweater. All right, back to Betty. Yes, there's a ton of bad stuff out there, Flash Fan. But not, like Carmen said, not everyone is bad. There's bad actors and everything, but it doesn't make them, it just doesn't make them all bad. There's people that do their jobs really, really well.
Your Honor, I have a letter that appears to be 5 pages long.
Date,
1987.
Mark ZZ,
I'm sorry, marked.
ZZ, double Z.
I didn't like her at first, but she definitely grew on me. And the only reason I didn't like her is because she just went too long in her
Before I go there,
questions.
can I ask a few questions first, John?
Certainly.
Okay.
But I do like her.
When you came back from Tahiti, were you served with any new court papers?
Yes, the day I came back, I was served with papers that I was in contempt for coming within 100 yards and dropping the dogs off.
Okay. And,
Your Honor, excuse me, there were 8 counts of contempt in that, not just one.
Your Honor, she has cross-examination.
Clear that up on cross, go ahead.
Were you served with a contempt paper that involved the dog?
Yes,
Now, was Tricia Smith still the attorney on the case?
yes,
And was she upset about not having moved forward at all on the divorce case, the property part?
yes.
Your Honor, I have another letter that's smart A, AAA for identification. I'm sorry, Your Honor, it's a letter that I believe is 3 pages dated January 15th, 1988. I'm sorry.
Gabby, that's very perfect.
What has been marked as AAA for identification. Do you recognize that letter?
Yes.
Now, when you had Tricia Smith as your lawyer at that time, were you still trying to, was the purpose still that she would move forward on the divorce itself?
That was the sole and only point of having a lawyer, yes.
And did there end up being another contempt hearing in regards to the dogs and the other items that were on the contempt order?
Yes,
And what kind of, where was that contempt hearing held?
I believe it was in Vista.
Okay, and in front of what judge was that held?
Judge Joseph,
And was the courtroom open?
of course not.
And was there a jury, or
No,
was that a court trial?
it was just Dan and the judge and me, and Dan's attorney.
Now, did you attend that hearing?
Yes, I did.
Was Tricia Smith present for that hearing?
Yes, she was.
Okay, did she represent you for that hearing?
No, I didn't want her to,
And why was that?
because I thought it was a total waste of money and a perversion of the legal system for Dan Broderick to be using the public courtrooms and the judge and the public court system for a personal vendetta against me about really stupid things. And I was supposed to be paying lawyers $250 an hour, and I just thought it was total nonsense. It was a joke, and I didn't want to waste any more legal fees playing games like that.
Did you think that anything Ms. Smith could do to win that hearing?
Excuse me?
Did you think that there was anything that she could do to win those hearings?
I don't know.
Now, did you also have a Christmas party planned that year?
Yes,
Were you able to have that party?
this is December 87, right?
Yes.
Yes, I did have the party. And
Okay. What kind of party was it?
it was a miniature version of the party we used to have where it was our good friends and their spouses and their children, where it was good for the kids to get together at someone's house for the holidays. And I had a full buffet, and the kids were now older. The kids were in range from 8 to 15, 16 by that time. They weren't little kids anymore. And everyone brought their children.
Were your children able to attend that party?
No, Dan would not let them come on the day that it happened. And he had plenty of notice. It was planned for quite a while.
Now, after the contempt hearing, did Ms. Smith remain your attorney?
Yes, she did.
Was there any time that that she stopped representing you?
She stopped representing me on the contempts only because it was my wish, but I wanted her to continue representing me on the divorce to get this thing settled.
Okay, and was there any time that stopped also?
Yes,
And when was that?
that was into 88.
Okay. Well, if we had the first hearing was the contempt hearing on that involved the dogs was in 88,
Mhm.
would it have been at that time that her representation of you stopped?
Not particularly. We had a discussion, the judge and she and myself, that I wanted her to continue on the case to settle the divorce. And the judge was very upset that nothing had been done on this case yet And she complained that Dan hadn't sent the discovery over. And there was this big discussion in the courtroom. But I think she got married the next day after that court thing and went on a honeymoon. When she came back, she didn't want to continue on the case.
The, now, what happened to you at that contempt hearing?
I was fined a lot of money, but I don't remember. It's $10,000
Okay.
fine
And
for dropping the dogs off, but not sentenced to jail.
now at the, sometime later on, in the spring of 1987, where was Danny going to school?
He was still going to Francis Parker
Okay.
in the 6th grade.
Now, sometime in the spring of 1987, did you go to a ski vacation during ski week? Did you go on?
Yes.
In 88, I'm
In
sorry.
88, I took Lee skiing because Dan took our whole family skiing, meaning the other 3 children and Linda, to our regular condo that we owned in Keystone, but he cut Lee out of it. Lee is an excellent skier, and I felt so sorry for her that I brought her skiing in Utah. But no matter what I did for her, I couldn't make up for the fact that she was not with her family and her brothers and sisters, and it was really sad and pathetic. But I did the best I could.
Okay. And did you do anything about, at that point in time, did you do anything when you were on that vacation?
Yeah, she was basically unhappy. She didn't want to be with me.
Stan?
Okay. Did you do anything?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do?
Lee was out skiing and she didn't want to ski with me, so I was in the hotel and I wrote what people refer to now as a book. I wrote this thing in one sitting, which was like the story so far up to that point of what had happened in the marriage and the affair and my whole life. And I wrote it because I was so scared of what was coming up in court next. And I really was very suicidal, and I wanted to leave something in writing in case I killed myself so the kids would know what happened here. It wasn't just what Dan was saying was going on.
And now, when did you talk about Dan in that book?
Sure.
And did you talk with him and looking back on the anger you felt at the time, the depression?
I'm sure. I haven't read it in a real long time, but I just wrote it at one sitting. And yeah, it was in 1988, and that's why I wrote it. I was very depressed.
Okay.
And very scared of what was happening in court and out of control and stuff.
Okay. Now, you've indicated that in 1976, when you went to the marriage encounter, you wrote there what your feelings were about Dan and why you married him. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And was that the way you felt about Dan up until the time of 1983 when problems arose?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the marriage encounter that's marked Y for identification?
Yes.
All right, this time I'm going to ask whether the jury can read that.
Vertical?
Yes.
I have no objection to that.
Yes, there's no objection, Your Honor. Counsel, in my sidebar, that there's no objection.
Well, he's talking about her book.
Yes.
Come on up.
And when you wrote this, these documents, and I'd like you to look at the first page here. Does that tell you, does that help you in remembering the date that you wrote that this happened?
Yes.
And what was the date that this happened?
The weekend was November 5th, 6th, and 7th of 1976.
And now, in the marriage encounter,
Brandon, I'm going to forbid you from showing up in my chat. It's like you're Carmen's dad coming to pick her up, take her home for the night. Stop it. Bye, Carmen. You were just waving, Brandon. I believe you. I'm still your sister. It's fine. It's fine. And here Betty goes, showing herself. She goes, she can't help herself. She's so full of anger and hurt and resentment. She just can't help but show it. She shows it every time the prosecutor objects. She sighs. She looks annoyed. It's not a good look for her when you're trying to be like, I don't get angry. Yes, Carmen, we've caught on. So make Gabby cry. That's fine. It's fine. I hope you feel good.
Itself, are there letters that you wrote to Dan?
Yes.
And was there any way you would start the letters?
This one says, "Darling Dan."
And did you write a number of letters to Dan in there?
Yes.
Did you talk to Dan about how you felt towards him when you were younger? When you two first met?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you describe it, as you can recall?
I just thought he was great. I thought he was fun. He was smart. He was the man that I chose to devote my life to.
Did you talk about, did you talk in there about love letters, sending love letters, and what that meant to you?
Yes, he used to, even when I saw him all the time, he wrote me letters in school, and I wrote back, but I have all those love letters from him. And so I thought this was the first time since our courting days when we wrote each other letters again, so I really liked it.
Okay. And did you talk to him about what you wanted out of marriage?
Yes.
And what were you talking to him about?
Objection, I asked you to answer. Please answer this.
It's the same.
Did you talk to him in here at all about his need to control?
Yes.
Where was Danny going to school in April of 1988?
He was at Francis Parker.
Okay. And where did people go? Is there a school that people go to a next level from Francis Parker?
They go from Francis Parker Lower School to the Francis Parker Upper School, or they switch at that time to the Bishop School in La Jolla that starts at 7th grade.
At the time that, was there, at a time at the Bishop School, to get into the Bishop School, what do you have to do? Is there anything in particular?
You have to apply, get an application and write an essay and have recommendations by your teachers to qualify to take an exam. And then if you pass the exam, you're eligible to perhaps be chosen to go there.
Okay. Now, did Danny want to go to that school?
Yes.
Okay. And is that something you discussed with him?
Yes.
And how far did you make the plans for him to take the test?
Yes. We filled out the application. I wrote the check. He wrote his essay. We got several of his teachers to write recommendations. He was a wonderful student, so that was no problem. And then he got his invitation to take the exam on a Saturday.
Okay. And was that something that had to be planned well in advance?
Yes. And there's only 50 students allowed to take the exam. And if for any reason you weren't able to make it, you were supposed to let them know 48 hours in advance so they could fill the spot with somebody else who was on the waiting list.
Okay. And had you made arrangements to pick him up to take him to the exam?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you go to pick him up?
To Dan's house.
And was there anyone home when you went to pick him up?
No, it was just like the soccer days. Everyone knew I was coming. They knew what time he should have been there. He should have been waiting for me to pick him up, and there was nobody home.
Okay. And now, did you make phone calls to Dan in regards to that?
Yes. I was,
Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was crying and I was very upset. And I said, I don't know why you're doing this to your kids. You know, you've had your education and I've had mine. And, you know, this isn't hurting me, what you're doing. This is hurting Danny. And I was really upset that he had done that.
And had you been involved in any activities with Children's Home Society?
The Children's Home Society had a big fashion show at Nordstrom's that exact same day, early that morning. And as a member of that group, I should have sold at least 10 tickets and I should have been working on it and performing a lot of duties as a member of the group. And I ditched on that group because I knew I had to do the Danny exam thing. And so here the Danny exam thing fell apart and the fashion show was happening and I disappointed all those people as well. And I felt really bad about both things. If I had known Danny wasn't going to go to the exam, I would have been fully involved helping them out.
Now, and you didn't learn that Danny wasn't going to be there until that morning?
Right.
Did you get served with a contempt order in regards to that?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have to go back into court again?
Yes.
And where did you go to court?
I believe it was Vista again.
And in front of who?
Judge Joseph.
And when you went in front of Judge Joseph at that time, was there, what happened in regards to that hearing?
I hadn't realized because I was representing myself.
Okay. Had there something happened in the other hearing, the last contempt hearing you had, that you didn't learn about until this hearing?
Yes.
And what was that?
Evidently at the previous hearing where I represented myself, there was put in there somewhere, but I didn't understand what was happening, is that if anything else in the future happened, I would automatically be fined $16,000 in attorney's fees. This wouldn't be to the city of San Diego like the $10,000. This would be $16,000 paid to Mr. Barry, my paying Dan's lawyer.
Okay. And in fact, were you fined the $16,000 payable to Dan's lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. Did the judge say anything at the end of that hearing?
Yes. Finally, the judge got upset with Dan Broderick and Gerald Barry and said, don't you dare come in this courtroom again unless you want her to go to jail. Because he was also going to send me to jail. And they made an argument against me going to jail. And the judge just had a fit because it dawned on the judge that they were playing games.
And so what did he say was going to happen next time you showed up in court?
What he said was, he said to Dan and Gerald Barry, don't come back in this courtroom with these contempts unless you want her to go to jail. So what that meant to me was, if we end up back in there on contempt, I am definitely going to jail.
And did you sometime later, did your children tell you something that they were told about that hearing?
Yes, Dan went home from that hearing and had dinner with the kids and was telling them that he kept me from jail and wasn't he a nice guy?
That upset you?
Yes.
Now, at this time, was there anything done in regards to transferring the case somewhere else to try to get a settlement of the case?
I started getting, we ended up in family court in front of Judge Murphy in summer of '88. But I can't remember if that was after the mandatory settlement conferences, before the mandatory settlement conference.
Hello, Ashinator 91. Hope you are doing well. Thank you for joining us.
Or during them. There were 5 mandatory settlement conferences.
Okay, and where were and those were in front of Judge Murphy?
I got a notice in the mail that you are supposed to be at this thing called a mandatory settlement conference. You are ordered to be fully prepared to settle. If you ask for an extension because
she red-rummed her ex and his new wife of 6 months, Linda Kolkena. I can never remember how to say her last name. So she did them both in. And this is her on direct, well, as the banner says, on direct examination. Yeah, her facial expressions have not helped her at all. Her size, her eye rolling, her everything's. Hello, Robin Cheyenne. Am I not supposed to say red round? Okay. I thought that. Yes. I thought that. Yeah. Yes. Or Aquanet Zach. And linebacker shoulder pads. Only the best for football players. Oh. Whoops. Sorry. Alrighty. Oh, it's okay. Mess away. Zach's in here, so. I'm used to it. I'm used to being messed with. Zach's been messing with me for years now. Won't even give me freaking milk money or milk. I'll just take the milk. Green Castle exit, Zach. Green Castle. You can do it. You can find it. It's still there, I promise. It did not get blown away in the storm. I don't know where Zach hails from because he's everywhere. He's in everyone's chat. I inherited him from Baker, from Broken Baker, but I don't know where he originated from. It's a mystery. Yes, Flash Fan does make fun of me all the time. I don't care. I make fun of myself. It's okay. Oh. Wait. So, Robin, do you... So, Betty, this is a 1991 trial, so it's obviously, you can tell by the clothes and the hair that it's old. She unalived her ex-husband and his new wife, and she is on the stand now under direct examination. I don't know, other than pushing her over the edge and kind of making her nutty. I don't know if Dog Mom's still here. She could probably give the legal term for it, but she basically snapped and went into their house and used a firearm, and that's that. But I don't think that Dan and Linda were innocent in everything that they did. I think they all pushed each other's buttons. They all drove each other crazy. Betty just went the craziest. Yeah, pulling the phone out of the wall, that was not good because she had to walk around to do that. Like you said, taking away his chance to be saved. Did she fire? I have to say this YouTube friendly. Did she fire the firearm and put a round into Dan when he was on the floor? I can't remember. Yes, we all can snap, and it's bad. And crimes of passion are bad. And I do think they're starting to look at them differently now than when Betty was there. I don't know. I just think there may have been more of a history with Betty than what we got to see. And that's just going by stuff I've read, and I have to weigh it as who was writing the article and what they wanted their narrative to be. So I can't say that for 100%. Oh yes, there's been life-size mannequins in this with the dowel rods through them to show where the rounds went through. It's not funny. It was funny, but it's not funny. But Gabby liked the one that went to the guy's butt cheeks. All right, I'm going back. We're almost done.
because you're not prepared to settle, you will be sanctioned. And the worst that can happen, according to my first mandatory settlement conference notice, the worst that can happen is if you don't settle the case on this date, you will be assigned a courtroom for a trial within 14 days or something. And so I was real happy when I got the first mandatory settlement notice, because I thought we were going to mandatorily be made to settle this case.
And did you appear before Judge Murphy?
I appeared downtown. It was not Judge Murphy, it was someone else.
Eventually, did you go to Judge Murphy?
After Dan missed 5 mandatory settlement conferences, Judge Murphy got control of the case, yes.
Okay. And how many of those mandatory settlement conferences did you go to?
All 5.
Did Dan show up at any of them?
No.
Okay. Were there any sanctions?
No.
Okay. Did what did Judge Murphy do at that time?
Mr. Barry had sent a replacement, a younger attorney, because
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Sustained.
What happened at the last hearing?
Judge Murphy got on the phone from his bench and called Gerald Barry and demanded that he show up right now, and he said we'd wait for him.
And why was that?
Because he had put off and put off and put off, and he was just playing games, and Judge Murphy said, I don't care what appointment you've got, I'm waiting for you, get over here now.
Okay.
And we waited, and Gerald Barry finally showed up.
Now, was the case settled at that time?
No,
Okay. And was the trial date set within 14 days?
no,
And who was representing you at this time?
myself.
Now, during this period of time, were you, as part of, eventually a trial date was set, wasn't it?
Yes, much later.
Now, were you starting to get some discovery as to, leading up to the trial in December of 1988, were you starting to get some discovery as far as community assets, what they were saying were your bills or what you were responsible for?
Yes, Tricia Smith gave me her files that she had gotten.
And eventually, were you sent things from Dan off in regards
Yes.
to things that you would need?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, and I would ask for 2 exhibits to be marked.
Triple B, why don't you describe that for the record?
Triple B, Your Honor, is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 page. It looks like a credit card bill with some kind of checks on the back of them, Xeroxed over them, looks like cash checks with a yellow sticker attached to it.
So mark, Triple C.
And Triple C is that one. Triple C, Your Honor, is a 1, 2, 3 page charge account. Again, with a yellow stickum attached to it with the name Linda Kolkena printed on it.
So mark.
Showing you what is marked Triple D for identification. Oh. Showing you, first of all, what is Triple B for identification with the yellow stickum with the initials B. Have you looked at these? No question how she keeps her girlish figure that's written in yellow.
Right.
When you received that, were these attached to that? And who is B? The initial B.
Me?
No, right here, this B. Do you know who that was?
No.
Okay. Do you know, did that look to you to be Linda's handwriting?
Yes.
Okay, and showing you what is marked Triple C, another yellow one that's attached that's with a type printed Linda Kolkena D. This pile is for the fat one, signed L. Did you receive this also?
Yes.
And was this attached to it at the time?
Yes.
Okay, now there's a D here with a dash, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that, the D with a dash?
That's what I used to call Dan a long time ago. I don't know anyone else who ever referred to Dan Broderick as D.
Okay, so that was something that was a name that you had for Dan when you were married to him?
It was more or less in our courtship, and the charm that he gave me, he engraved it Love D. And on all the letters they used to write me, it was always Love D. But never before have I ever seen anyone refer to him as D.
Your Honor, I'm going to go to another area. I wonder if this would be an appropriate time to make a recess.
Certainly. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our evening recess at this time. Please remember the admonition not to discuss the case among yourselves nor allow anyone else to discuss it with you, nor form any opinions till it's finally submitted to you. Have a nice evening and be extra careful not to look, watch, or listen to anything about the case.
I like this judge. I like that he's still alive because I didn't think he was. And I like that he I think he's a federal judge. So you would not want to be that court reporter. Ash, that was like the best day of testimony so far. It was a defense witness. I guess. Sorry, Ash. Thanks, Zach. I sent Dill a message, Zach. She said LMAO. Lamau is what she said. That's all. They're busy playing games, or she would probably pop back in and talk some crap to you. But they're playing Call of Duty. Yeah, but anyway, sorry. That was the best day of testimony so far because, oh, nope, there she is. They had this guy, and you gotta think, this is 1991, okay? So things have come a long way. Testing has changed. We have like computers. But he had a ruler. And the defense thought it would be really, really smart to bring in the mattress that the alleged crime was committed on, blood and all, and the sheets and the comfort, all the bedding. And they set the bed up in the courtroom. And this guy is like, he's testifying about his stuff. And then he is literally taking the ruler to the bedding to measure it, to make sure he has the bedding like right as it's supposed to be, down to the wrinkles. He is wrinkling the fitted sheet on the side. And at one point, he tells the defense attorney, "Stop touching my sheet." I mean, it was like crazy. And I was like, if you're the prosecutor here, at first I was like, if you're the prosecutor, do you get up and ask anything? Because you don't need to. He really just argued for you. But then she got up, and it kind of clicked what she was going to do. So the prosecutor gets up. Now they have these life-size mannequins that are laying in the bed with the dowels through them of where all the projectiles went through them. And she's got the alleged firearm in her hand and basically reenacts the crime. Like, it was brilliant. And then they fight over these wrinkles on the side of the fitted sheet forever. Like, he's just trying to get them just perfect. And she's like, no, it was like this. And he's like, no, it's like this. It was so bad. No, but they didn't make any witnesses lay in the bed because they had the mannequins in the bed. And yes, they don't wear gloves. Gloves are not a thing in these older trials. It's weird. My camera's starting to mess up again. I don't know what's wrong with it. But it's like, it's crazy. They're handling all this evidence and they don't wear gloves and any of it. Why does this judge look like the aged version of the guy that built a Titanic movie? I like this guy. I like this judge. He does kind of remind me of that guy. Can't remember his name. I'm going to remove this. See if my camera stops acting up. I don't think it's going to. Yep. I mean, it was the best testimony so far. Here, I'll put that back up because Gabby wants you to see the decanter on the judge's desk. We know it's water, but we like to pretend it's not. Because you hear him open that thing, and it's great. Bree was gluten intolerant, which is weird because she was inbred. Zach likes to sniff white dog poop, then taste test. What are you two doing? Good grief. We're not 100% sure that it's water. It could be anything. But I mean, he's always happy. Sometimes he looks like he's leaning back in his chair and rethinking his life choices. But I think he's been fair in this trial. The defense might disagree with me. Like, ask a good question. And stop asking repetitive questions, and we might get there. Uh-oh. Well, Zach shouldn't have insulted Dill. I can't help him. Zach, I can't help you now. Bree. Don't go there. That's not true, Zach. Just to her. Not for reals, but to her. Don't do it. All right, you guys. That's all I got. Let me do this because it's 9 o'clock, which means Grandma's going. Robin, so far, I think he has been fair. He hasn't done anything that I've been like, what the heck? Yeah, trivia time, save. All right, guys, I've got you set to go to Grandma's. So if you would at least pop in and say hello. She was here earlier. But we will be back tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time with part 5. Part 5 of Betty's testimony is split up into 12 parts, so we will be doing part 5 tomorrow and just plugging on with this trial. Absolutely, Betty should have just shut her mouth. And Dog Mom, you may know this, but the prosecutor in this trial became a judge. She's since retired. And this trial made it so she did not want cameras in the courtroom, and she never allowed cameras in her courtroom except for, I think, verdicts and sentencings, just because of this trial, which I think cameras should be in the courtroom. So I kind of like didn't agree with her on that one, but I kind of understand it. So I'll see. I will learn how to talk. I will try to get my camera working right. And see you guys all tomorrow at 6:30 Eastern time. And we will continue on with this trial. So for now, I will see you guys later. And I'm sending you over to Trivia with Grandma.